Turning now to Washington, D.C., where the report of the arrest of Senator Larry Craig is generating a massive media frenzy.
Breaking tonight, a Republican senator busted by police.
Craig's arrest was first reported about 24 hours or so ago.
A day later, the Idaho Statesman published the story it had been holding.
Republican Senator Larry Craig from Idaho again, and we'll be having a news conference in 45 minutes.
Thank you all very much for coming out today. First, please let me apologize to my family, friends, and staff, and fellow Idahoans for the cloud placed over Idaho.
Senator, what happened in Minneapolis?
Hey, what if you were gay?
Come out of the closet.
All right, man, come on, Larry, be gay.
I think it's very sad. This is somebody who has lived in the closet his whole life, has probably cheated on his wife any number of times. You know, it's a twisted kind of psychological thing that happens when you're in the closet and living a double life. It makes you do crazy things. And for a United States senator to be soliciting sex in a public restroom is a crazy thing.
You know, to understand his story and all of these stories, you have to understand where the culture was. In 1955, my newspaper reported on a gay sex scandal involving allegedly underage men and powerful people in Boise. Among the headlines on our editorial page was one that read, "Crush the monster being homosexual perversity." That was 1955. Larry Craig was 10 years old. And I imagine him thinking that that was an object lesson that he needed to heed, that he couldn't aspire to be a United States senator and be gay at the same time. Every time he was up for election, the question was raised, will someone raise the issue?
Good evening. The Capitol Hill investigation of sex and drugs, which had existed mainly in the congressional rumor mill, today took on the attributes of a serious and spreading scandal.
The FBI formed a special squad to investigate allegations of homosexual activity between congressmen and teenage pages. One congressman came forward after rumors surfaced that he was involved in the case.
I've always been aggressive and upfront with what I believe in, and when I have people telling me that a whole series of false accusations are made against my character, frankly, it makes me mad as hell.
Many of the people who are gay, who are in public service, seem to think that they're immune from being exposed. And they go out. They go to bars. They go to clubs. They even go to bathhouses.
When I was really young in D.C. back in the 80s, one of my favorite places to go back then was the Follies. There were a number of men I saw there from time to time, and he was one of those. He had taken notice of me, and then he said, well, let's go somewhere else. And I proceeded to follow him to his house on Capitol Hill. And there were pictures of family around and a card that was addressed to Suzanne Craig. We then wound up performing oral sex on each other, and then he wanted to fuck me. Once he had come, it was everything to get me back out of there. He grabbed me by the shoulder and very boldly said, remember, you never saw me, you've never been here. And he reached into his pocket, took out a $20 bill, shoved it in my back pocket with one finger, and said, just remember, I can buy and sell your ass 1,000 times.
Let me be clear. I am not gay. I never have been gay.
It's very often those self-hating gay people who in the closet are the most vicious towards other gays and lesbians as a way to kind of deflect attention from their own orientation.
There is not one civil rights law at the federal level that exists to protect gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender people. There's absolutely not one law.
The fact that Senator Craig and those like him can engage in homosexual activity 1 minute and then try to write us out of existence the next, there is no punishment harsh enough as far as I'm concerned.
He was a powerful force on Senate committees, a solid family values conservative.
The American people already know that Bill Clinton is a bad boy, a naughty boy. I'm going to speak out for the citizens of my state who, in the majority, think that Bill Clinton is probably even a nasty, bad, naughty boy.
But in October 2006, 8 months before the senator's arrest in Minneapolis, a gay activist named Michael Rogers, who makes it his business to out conservative politicians, wrote in his blog that he'd interviewed several men who claimed to have had sex with Senator Larry Craig.
In October of 2006, I outed Larry Craig. I know somebody who had sex with Larry Craig in a restroom in Union Station. That, to me, is the crux of the case right there. And right now I have a number of open files of folks that I'm actively looking at, from a U.S. cabinet official to the offices of some pretty anti-gay members of Congress. So I'm here, I'm getting ready to go on Hannity and Combs tonight at 9 o'clock. And David's with me, helping me out on some of my talking points. Say hi, David.
Hello.
Can't let the right wing be the only ones with the flag. I actually once had somebody ask me on Fox News, are you sure you want to wear that flag? Yeah, I am. So, David, why don't you fire me a few questions, like how Hannity's going to do that, you know? Yeah,
Mike, how is what you're doing different than McCarthyism? This
Well,
is McCarthyism.
first of all, Sean, McCarthy was a liar. McCarthy put out false information about American.
Oh, no, that's just dishonest. I'm about to cut you off right there. That's just dishonest.
Sean,
Mike,
Sean,
we're out of time.
this is what happens.
Your mouth, I'm out of it.
Breaking news tonight, Fox News has confirmed that Senator Larry Craig may be reconsidering his decision to resign. Joining us now with reaction to this story is blogger Mike Rogers, who called for an investigation into Craig last year. All right, from the
Hi,
beginning.
Sean, and good evening. Thank you for having me on. Larry Craig is a hypocrite. He is a anti-gay, closeted individual who has sex with other men.
Well, I read what you had, and apparently this tape of this one guy that the Idaho Statesman followed up on, it was
it's not one guy, Sean.
It was an anonymous source. Why doesn't the guy go on the record?
Sean, it's not one guy. It's now 3 or 4, and there's absolutely no doubt in my mind. I have heard physical characteristics repeated to me from various individuals.
Look, I don't know about Senator Craig. I'm going to be honest. I don't have the details. There is suspicion.
Are there others in the same category as Larry Craig whose names will be forthcoming because of your work?
Absolutely, there are names in folks in the Congress and high positions of power who are leading a secret double life. And what I would say to Sean is, Sean, where do you stand with Larry Craig? And will you stand in the same position if other two-lived hypocrites are exposed? Because I can assure you that there is no shortage. My first very big case was this congressman in Virginia by the name of Ed Schrock. A month later, I got a tip that there was a congressman who was gay, and that he was using a interactive phone dating service to find what may be known as Instasex, or, you know, to hook up with somebody for sex. And the first thing I said to the person was, well, this is insane. I can't put up that a congressman is using an interactive phone service without proof. I mean, that's a hell of a charge levy. And he says, I have several recordings of the congressman going on the phone line to meet a man for sex, and they're very explicit. And I was like, wow.
I weigh 200 pounds, 4, 8 months, you're very bumped up, very tan. If I could get together with a guy time to time just to play, I'd like him to be in very good shape, flat stomach, good chest, good arm, well up, cut. Just get naked, play and see what happens. Nothing real heavy duty, but just a fun time. Go down on him, go down on me, and just take it from there. Hope to hear from you. Bye.
So I took the recordings and went ahead and reported on Ed Schrock on my blog.
A case of the moral hunter becoming the moral hunted. Congressman Edward Schrock, a Virginia Republican who once co-sponsored a bill to ban same-sex marriage, dropped out of his bid for re-election last month.
He never admitted that they were him, but he resigned from his re-election. There it is. I'm going to tell people who these horrible traitors are, and they are traitors to their people. I believe that. And I felt that it was time for me to start reporting that as hypocrisy. Not outing people who are gay, but reporting on individuals who are working against the community that they then expect to protect. Be waiting in front of 1600 Broadway. That's perfect.
Michael's decided that they have been chasing us for years. And what Michael represents is we're going to chase back. Now that upsets the rules because everyone knows the hounds chase the foxes. Well, this fox is chasing the hounds, and it's got them all bent out of shape. And I say more power to him.
I think outing is a fundamentally wrong and dishonest thing to do. No one can ever know or understand the personal journey that an individual takes to accepting the fact that they're gay or lesbian.
I just feel sympathy when they are exposed that way. I think every gay person knows what it's like to have your privacy ripped apart.
There is a right to privacy, but not a right to hypocrisy. It is very important that the people who make the law be subject to the law. People who are not subject to laws will make harsh laws because they don't have to live with them. Having the people who make the law be fully covered by the law is a safeguard against unfairness. Well, that's a fundamental principle on which our democracy is in part built, that gay people who support homophobia are violating.
And now to campaign 2006. He's been the state's Attorney General and Education Commissioner, and on Tuesday, Charlie Crist hopes to be elected governor.
Charlie Crist, 50, single, no kids, doesn't own a home, wants to live in the governor's mansion.
I'm a consistent conservative, and I can continue to stand for the things that I believe in.
At a stop in Miami, the tone was urgent.
I need to get it out there. I need your vote. I need your heart. I need your passion. Get out there, get it done. Viva Crist. Let's win. God bless you. I believe that marriage is a sacred relationship between a man and a woman. I've always felt that way, and I still believe that now. Marriage is a relationship like my mother and father had, like I had before I got divorced. It's one of those unique institutions, not only in America, but across the world, where a man and a woman commit to one another.
Hi, Bruce. This is Bob Norman with New Times. I am a journalist who works in the alternative realm, and I do the stories that the mainstream media doesn't do. I had written about Mark Foley in 2003, and that had gotten a tremendous amount of attention. That was what led to my involvement with Crist in terms of writing about Crist. A source contacted me via email, and this source was at a dinner party at a multi-million-dollar mansion in Fort Lauderdale, and he was with a young staffer named Jason Wetherington. Jason was a young Republican staffer working for Katherine Harris, the famous masquerade queen of the 2000 election.
Jason said that he had met Charlie Crist, had a relationship with him, a sexual relationship with him, and he expected after Crist won the election, he would get an appointment to Crist's administration, and that he had hoped to continue the relationship.
I felt that this source was completely earnest and honest, and so I decided I was going to go see Jason Wetherington. He was very, very uncomfortable with the line of questioning. That was obvious that he initially said that he hadn't said that at the dinner party. Then he hedged that a bit. Well, I might have been drinking, that kind of thing. He was extremely upset and just said, do what you have to do.
I know you've addressed this question once or twice before, the whisper campaign by your opponents about whether or not you're gay. Now, I don't care whether you are or not, but in fact...
The point is I'm not.
In fact...
Well, I like it.
Fine. Well,
not that there's anything wrong with that, as they would say on Seinfeld, but I just happen not to be.
Then I got another phone call, and it was from another friend of Jason Wetherington's.
There was a dinner party that was held in my home, and Jason was at the party. He began to allude that there was a relationship between Crist and him, and that it was physical.
Now I've got two sources who are saying the exact same thing, who don't know each other.
It was revealed at night that Crist did have a partner, or there was another man in his life.
It was Bruce Carlton Jordan. He was friends with Jay Voss, a veteran Republican pilot, and Jay Voss's girlfriend, Dee Dee Hall.
The sworn statement given will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Yes.
Do you know a gentleman by the name of Bruce Jordan?
I do.
Did he tell you that he was gay?
Yes, he brought up the fact that, that he was in a relationship, that he was involved with Charlie. And I was like, okay, and then he just stated his first name, and he said, maybe you've heard of him. He said, Charlie Crist.
I contacted Charlie on the phone and asked him directly about Jason Wetherington and Bruce Carlton Jordan. Charlie very smoothly denied that he knew or remembered knowing either one of these people.
The governor-elect of the state of Florida, Charlie Crist.
Nearly
4,000 children are waiting to be adopted in Florida, but the state is still turning away couples looking to adopt. Why? Because they're gay.
Frank Gill is a gay foster parent who wants to make it permanent. Gill and his partner have been foster parents for 4 years to these two boys, now 4 and 8 years old. They were neglected and abandoned by their birth parents. Florida's the only state in the country that bans gay adoption. Governor Charlie Crist has supported the prohibition on gay adoption and tells the Herald he has no second thoughts on that.
Welcome back. I'm Michelangelo Signorelli on Sirius LQ 109. Mike Rogers, the most feared man on Capitol Hill, according to the Washington Post, is now here in the studio. He is the man who got the ball rolling on Larry Craig, the senator from Idaho. Welcome to the show.
I heard you're gay.
Are you going to out me now?
That's what I say.
This is always a question that people put out there. Are you only focused on Republicans, or are there closeted Democrats doing damage, and how come they're not being exposed?
What I tell folks is the reason that 90% of the cases or so are Republicans says a lot more about the Republican Party than it does my work.
And what we're showing is it's the closet. It's not homosexuality. It's the closet that breeds that kind of...
And the closet of hypocrisy.
Absolutely.
And it has given a lot of credibility to the work you began a decade ago.
You know, I went to journalism school, left, thought I was going to get this great serious news job, and wound up working for a PR firm that specialized in gossip. And it was in that world, in the 80s, that I saw how the gossip world would glamorize heterosexuality, but anything about any celebrity who was secretly gay, we would help them cover. It was the one area where they didn't demand the truth. Everywhere else, they wanted to know who was dating who, but when it came to gay celebrities, it was accepted and understood that you covered for them and you actually put out lies. I started to write a column called Gossip Watch. It was a watch of the gossip columns. It was a look at how the gossip columns, which are read by more people than any other forum in the media, are completely constructed and created to glamorize heterosexuality and keep homosexuality invisible. In 1990, Malcolm Forbes, the multimillionaire publisher of Forbes magazine, died. And the media immediately, in all of his obituaries, held him up as a very successful capitalist who was dating Elizabeth Taylor for years, and yet they left out the fact that he was gay. It took years, in fact, for the New York Times to finally say that Malcolm Forbes was gay, and I felt that the historical record had to be corrected immediately.
Michelangelo Signorelli is his name, and he's the one who outed Malcolm Forbes after his death, writing that Forbes, the very symbol of establishment capitalism, secretly was gay.
I'm certainly not doing anything wrong, and I think 20 years from now, we're all going to look back and say, what the hell was all the big deal about? Welcome back. 11 minutes before the hour, I'm Michelangelo Signorelli. I'm here with Mike Rogers in studio, and we're taking your calls. You're on the Michelangelo Signorelli Show.
What happens when you guys expose all of the closeted people in the conservative movement? Get all the closeted people, all the hypocrites out of there. What have you got left but just the solid, non-hypocritical festival of hate?
It's a fair question. Mike, what do you think? Thanks for that, Greg.
Well, in most cases, when somebody is reported on, they become a pro-gay legislator. But is there a backlash, which is what he's asking? What happens when you leave just this core of hate? Well, Barney Frank puts it best. The reason people hate gay people is because their leaders tell them to. And I think that each one of these outings...
I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
And I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The election of Ronald Reagan brought us a fairly large number of high-placed but closeted gay men in the Republican administration who failed to adequately address the epidemic of AIDS.
The President of the United States would not even say the word AIDS publicly as late as 1987.
Reagan had been elected on this fundamentalist conservative role in America, led by the National Conservative Political Action Committee. The president of NCPAC was Terry Dolan. Terry is dancing at Flamingo on the weekend in New York and propping up the most right-wing homophobes in America by day.
This is a man who's raising money to kill us, Terry Dolan. And I went to a cocktail party in Washington, and there he was. And I threw a drink in his face. I said, how dare you come to a party of gay people after what you're doing to us?
Richard Brozzi, the head of the NIH, in charge of all the infectious diseases at the time at the admin of AIDS, would not do anything that was required by the situation, anything heroic, simply because he was afraid he'd spent his entire career trying not to be identified with us.
Everyone knows Richard's gay. He's got pictures of boyfriends on his dresser at home. And so that closet can kill other people, and it has. Before AIDS, we were concerned with privacy. After AIDS, that was collusion with genocide. Being silent, being invisible, particularly an elected or appointed official, whose responsibility it is to respond to this public health crisis, and they didn't because they were closeted gays.
Come on along and listen to the lullaby of Broadway.
Ed Koch was mayor of New York City, and he didn't want to lift a hand to help gay people. He would not do anything that was required by the situation.
Fuck you.
San Francisco AIDS organization was getting money from their mayor in huge amounts. We weren't getting anything. And it pissed me off more and more and more because we all knew he was gay.
Now, Ed Koch had always consistently in his public life refused to answer any questions about his sexuality. When Ed's third or fourth term was coming up, I was asked then by press people to acknowledge that Richard Nathan was Ed's former lover. And so I stonewalled the press during that primary race because I didn't want to be the voice that outed a candidate. About 74, 75, when he was in Congress, Ed Koch was planning to run for mayor, and he started having Sunday night potluck suppers at his apartment in the village. And one night, Richard and I were at Ed's house, and as we were departing, Ed said, "Oh, Richard, stay." And Richard said, "No, Ed, I have to go. I'll call you later." So as we were walking across Washington Square Park, I said, "What was that all about? You and the congressman?" And he said, "We're having a relationship." And I said, "You mean like a relationship?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "You know, why? You're a nice-looking young man." He's an older, not terribly attractive man. And he said, "It's a real aphrodisiac when you get a call from Congress. Say, I'm coming in. Let's have dinner Friday night." The day Ed Koch was inaugurated, there was a private party, and we watched Ed come in with Bess clutching their pinkies. And Richard said, "I'm out of here. It's been made clear to me that I have to leave town, or at least not be in the picture." And he said, "So I've decided to move to California."
About a year or two after I got to know Dick, he said he had something he wanted me to know. Over the course of a couple of years, he had been lovers of Ed Koch, and after they broke up, Ed had made it impossible for him to work in New York. No instance of homophobia hurt him more than the treatment by the man he was in love with.
I was at a fundraising event in Los Angeles in '81. A man came up to me and he said, "I'm Dick Nathan." And he proceeded to tell me about his affair with Ed Koch and what a pig he was, and that he was prepared finally to come and announce publicly that Ed Koch was gay, which is what we needed. So he came to New York, and oh boy, it was, we were beside ourselves. And Dick Nathan came and said, "I'm sorry, I can't do it."
Dick was worried about his safety, and Dick did feel that if he went public, he would suffer.
Dick was threatened, physically threatened, and financially threatened, and he came and he was terrified in the middle of the night leaving the city.
I first met Jim McCreary in the fall of 1975 at the Signature Attorney House. I knew from the moment we met that he was interested, and it was the next summer, during summer school, that it began.
The moment I spoke to Gary, I knew he was telling the truth. But nonetheless, for his own protection and for the protection of the magazine, we wanted to source it as though the New York Times was doing it. So we found several people who also had sexual relationships with Jim McCreary, who had signed legal affidavits.
Jim is, 7 years my senior. He would just appear at the Attorney House from time, his annual pilgrimage, so to speak, in the fall.
Good afternoon. Throughout my life, I have grappled with my own identity, who I am. As a young child, I often felt ambivalent about myself, in fact, confused
From the first words out of his mouth this afternoon, it was clear Jim McGreevey, the governor of New Jersey, was making very big news indeed.
At a point in every person's life, one has to look deeply into the mirror of one's soul and decide one's unique truth.
And beyond the facts and allegations and anguish immediately surrounding his story, what the governor said today also becomes part of a larger story at a turning point for the country.
And so my truth is that I am a gay American.
Another boundary of American politics has been crossed today. With his wife by his side, the governor announced that he is gay, that he had an affair with a man, and that he would resign. His announcement makes him the highest ranking American.
I began to understand that, even in grammar school, that somehow I was profoundly different. No one comes up to you and tells you that, you're African American or Jewish American or Irish American. I mean, you discover you're, gay by yourself. And I was going to the public library and looking for what is homosexuality and what are its origins and how it's described. Well, it was all horrific. It was all apocalyptic. It was a curse. I accepted all those messages of shame, messages of hate, messages of ignorance. But you realize it's intrinsic. It's who you are. And so you deny this thing, but what happens is it comes out. And it comes out in dark places. You begin to believe that it is shameful because you're acting, for me, in shameful ways. I mean, where am I having sex? I'm having sex in back alleys of abandoned synagogues. I'm having sex on rest stops. Well, the fact is my straight friends were, picking up their girlfriends in bars and at parties and doing it wherever. I didn't have that opportunity to do it in public ways that were healthy, that were safe, and that were accepted. And so by doing it in secret, closeted ways, I believe it is unhealthy for the psychology, it is unhealthy for the being, and it was unhealthy for my soul.
All right, so let's start from the beginning. I went in the bathroom. I went in the bathroom. I got in a stall, sat down. I started to go to the bathroom. Did our feet come together? Apparently they did both.
Let me be clear. I am not gay. I never have been gay.
He doesn't think he's gay. You know when he's not gay? Maybe he's homosexual or something. I don't know. Not gay as in identified politically with our tribe.
Who knows if Larry Craig is gay or not, but whatever he is, it's possible that he's actually part of us. We don't want him, but it's possible he's actually part of our community.
I think there are a lot of people, especially in his generation, and it's still possible in younger generations, for people to be so terrified internally of their own sexual orientation, they literally just suppress it to such an extent they can't even acknowledge it while acting as it.
Are you technically not a homosexual? Is it possible you're bisexual?
It's no to both.
The other question is, do you think it would be something that would be awful? In other words, do you view it as something that would be awful to have to admit that you were gay?
I don't agree with the lifestyle. And I've said so by my votes over the years.
I think that for a lot of gay people who may harbor some very, very deep, internalized homophobia, one of the ways that they feel better about themselves is by aligning themselves with the forces that might actually want to do harm to them.
As a teenager, I was labeled a fag, and what I would do in order to battle that and fight that was I would join up with the other guys who would bash other gay boys to prove that, hey, I'm not a fag, I'll even beat up one. And that, going back, is really what we see today in so many people who are in Congress voting against gay people. Same thing I was doing as a teenager. They are bashing other gay people in order to prove that they're not gay.
I've never seen anything in history that where deeply anti or homophobic activities haven't been at some level perpetuated or fostered by people who are gay.
Look at McCarthyism and witch hunts led by a closeted gay, Roy Cohn, a true evil bastard.
The target groups of witch hunts and prosecution were communists and queers.
Roy Cohn supported lots of really dreadful people who were completely homophobic, and in some ways was himself, homophobic. I mean, he had a lot of sort of negative feelings about out gay people.
Roy Cohn is not a homosexual. Roy Cohn is a heterosexual man, Henry, who fucks around with guys.
I had to take my best shot at trying to figure out how that kind of cognitive dissonance is navigated inside of somebody, and I feel like I did a pretty good job of it. I mean, the scene that everybody loves best is when he's diagnosed with AIDS and he says to his doctor, "I'm not a gay man."
Now, to someone who does not understand this, homosexual is what I am because I have sex with men.
But really, this is wrong. Homosexuals are not men who sleep with other men. Homosexuals are men who, in 15 years of trying, cannot pass a pissant anti-discrimination bill through city council. Homosexuals are men who know nobody, and who nobody knows, who have zero clout.
The rationale goes something like this, because it took me a while to figure it out. But it was sort of like, Rich, you are a weak gay because you came out. I'm a stronger person because I remain not part of a gay liberal community. I am still conservative, and I am everything I want. I don't push my agenda on anyone. And straights don't push their sexual lives. Why should we? And it's I've heard this a million times. And it's very warped. But it was sort of like, you couldn't have the stamina to stay in the closet.
They're very careful. It's like a Broadway show. Politics is like a Broadway show to them in that everything is staged, everything is planned, every word that comes out of somebody's mouth is scripted.
Today is a special day in my life. It's not just Valentine's Day. It happens to be the anniversary of the first date I had with my wife, Suzanne. Am I a romantic? Well, maybe just a little bit.
Even after the Craigs got married, and he adopted her 3 children from a previous marriage, the rumors about her husband persisted.
They were saying that it's a marriage of convenience.
To cover a gay lifestyle.
Oh, give me a break.
I don't know what they have to say in public, and I actually kind of admire them for being able to give that performance, and I'm sure I couldn't. But that's some weird shit.
People know me and know that I would never do that. That's almost like selling your soul for something. No.
Where do you find the spouses of these people who stick with them? I mean, that is so bizarre. How do you stand next to your husband after he's been in a stall? I mean, I would have been I'd headed to a shower for a Silkwood scrub down, or certainly to an STD clinic. I wouldn't be at the Whistle Stop Cafe standing by him. Is she insane?
What interests me more, and I think what is more common, are these straight women who are married to closeted gay men who don't love.
I engaged in an adult consensual affair with another man, which violates my bonds of matrimony.
I dated Jim for 4 years before we were married, so I thought I knew him. People always say, oh, there had to be signs. I had to know, this was an arranged marriage. With our sex life or relationship, there was nothing, or intimacy, there was nothing to indicate that there was a problem. I had never been married before, so I couldn't compare it to another marriage, but from talking to friends and family, it was a normal relationship.
If you're keeping a double ledger from the second of your morning breath to the time you go to bed at night, it's like, a bad Star Trek episode, and you have to discern which foot is in which universe at any given time. You're playing in a parallel universe, but it's not integrated, it's not honest, it's not wholesome, and it's not transparent.
None of that was real. None of those feelings, of those emotions were real from his perspective. It was all an act. What part of my life and my marriage was real? Was that trip real? Was that vacation real? What about it was authentic? If your husband leaves you for another woman, or your wife leaves you for another man, at some point you have feelings for each other. So at some point there was love. In my case, I don't think he ever felt that for me.
There were moments of but at that point, I wasn't ready to accept even who and what I am. So to be totally open with her, I would have had to accept myself and then share it with somebody I love.
To a certain point they are the victim, but they made their own choices about how they were going to live their lives.
God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, bless, preserve, and protect.
Well, I think it had to be torture for him to go through life, trying to live as someone he clearly wasn't comfortable being. But he didn't have to destroy my life or my daughter's life or anybody else's life.
It was wrong, it was foolish, it was inexcusable. And for this, I ask the forgiveness and the grace of my wife. She has been extraordinary throughout this ordeal.
I've been privileged to serve people of this great state.